A NoMoreStinkyMonkeys.com production. I've got my spine, I've got my orange crush. Okay, by the early 1980s, we had been exposed to so many different kinds of music. Disco, progressive, new wave, heavy metal, punk, synthesizer pop, even European forms of ska and reggae. But sometimes you don't want something fancy. Sometimes you're just in the mood for meat and potatoes. Good old-fashioned rock and roll, and this next act produced just that throughout the 1980s. He wasn't going to break new musical ground or be a darling of the critics, but for 3 minutes on the radio, your brain could take a rest, and you could just jam along to something that felt familiar and fun. His music was like the peanut butter and jelly sandwich of commercial rock, and even though he was born in 1959 and was only 10 years old at the time, he somehow wrote a classic song about being in a band in the summer of '69, and that song made me a true fan of his, and why he is number 152, Bryan Adams. Bryan Guy Adams was born in Ontario, Canada, to two English immigrant parents. His father, Captain Conrad Adams, was in the British Army, then the Canadian Army, and finally was a United Nations observer. Young Bryan lived in many parts of the world with his family as the son of a diplomat. When he was 15, his mother, brother, and he moved to Vancouver, where while his father was working abroad. Bryan then got into the local music scene and became a singer for a pub band called Sweeney Todd. This was 1974. They had a #1 hit in Canada, but he still quit the band at 16. At 18, he met a drummer and songwriter named Jim Valance, and it has been a partnership that's lasted to this day. In 1980, they released Bryan's first album, but it languished. However, his second album in 1981 had a rock radio hit called Lonely Nights. But 1983 was his breakthrough year, with the album Cuts Like a Knife. Besides the title song, he had an even bigger hit with Straight from the Heart. In 1984, his Reckless album made him a household name with hits like Run to You, Heaven, and his anthem, Summer of '69. Rock fans of a certain age all dream of being in a band in '69, driving a Volkswagen bus up to Woodstock and jamming. Even though we knew Bryan was only 10 years old then, we let that go and went along with him on the imaginary ride. Besides that, it's just a kick-ass rock song, and when you hear it in concert, you feel even more excited. At Live Aid, he finished it off with Summer of '85, and it drew a huge roar from the crowd. At the Amnesty show in 1986, he sang Summer of '86, and the same thing happened. For some reason, Bryan has this ability to make what should be a cliched moment feel exciting and new. Bryan started working on movie soundtracks in the 1990s, and it is then that my wife Barbara said he had cut his balls off. He's had major success with his movie ballads, but they are so wimpy that I can't change the station fast enough. Billboard magazine celebrated him a few years ago for being the 38th most successful performer in chart history. But I believe much of the success came from those 90s ballads. It started with the Robin Hood theme, Everything I Do for You, and it went downhill from there. But in the 1980s, he was Canada's version of Bon Jovi. Oh, when I look back now, that summer seemed to last forever. And if I had a choice, yeah, I'd always want to be there. Those were the best days of my life. From the Freditor.